Amira Khalid was 27, a translator who'd arrived at the military outpost 3 months earlier. She'd been hired to bridge communication gaps between the local militia and the international coalition stationed in the region. The outpost, a cluster of concrete bunkers and barbed wire, sat on the border of a conflict zone where trust was scarce and suspicion was a currency. Amira's job was simple: translate documents, interpret conversations, and keep the fragile alliance from fracturing. She was good at it. Too good, some whispered. Her fluency in 3 languages, her quick wit, and her ability to navigate tense negotiations made her indispensable. But it also made her a target. The outpost was a pressure cooker. Soldiers, local and foreign, were on edge, worn down by months of skirmishes and false intel. Rumors of a mole had been circulating for weeks. Classified plans kept leaking to insurgent groups, and every failed operation tightened the noose around the coalition's neck. Fingers pointed in every direction, but Amira, with her quiet confidence and outsider status, became an easy scapegoat. She was a civilian, a woman, and a local in a place where loyalty was questioned daily. It started with whispers. A soldier claimed he'd seen her slip a note to a local vendor. Another swore she'd been on a satellite phone at odd hours. None of it was concrete, but in a place where doubt could get you killed, it was enough. Colonel Reza, the outpost commander, was a man forged by 2 decades of war. At 45, he was known for his iron discipline and zero tolerance for betrayal. He'd lost men to bad intel before, and he wasn't about to let it happen again. When a report landed on his desk accusing Amira of passing coordinates to insurgents, he didn't hesitate. He ordered her detained. Amira was brought to the central courtyard at noon, the sun beating down on cracked earth. A crowd gathered, soldiers, local workers, even a few villagers who'd slipped through the gates. Her hands were zip-tied behind her back, her dark hair falling loose over her shoulders. She stood straight, her jaw set, her eyes scanning the faces around her. There was no fear in her expression, only defiance. Reza stood at the front, his arms crossed, his face unreadable. He'd seen spies break before, weeping or begging as their lies unraveled. Amira wasn't breaking. "Search her," Reza ordered. His voice was flat, but it carried the weight of authority. 2 soldiers stepped forward, one a young private named Harris, the other a local recruit named Omar. They hesitated, glancing at each other. Searching a woman in public wasn't standard protocol, but Reza's glare left no room for argument. The crowd murmured, some jeering, others shifting uncomfortably. This wasn't just a search. It was a spectacle, a warning to anyone who might cross the line. Omar reached for Amira's jacket, pulling it off her shoulders. She didn't resist, but her eyes locked onto Reza's, unflinching. Harris fumbled with her shirt, lifting it to check for hidden devices or papers. The crowd's noise grew louder, a mix of taunts and unease. Then Omar froze, his hand hovering over her lower back. He'd seen something, a tattoo, stark against her skin. A scorpion, its tail curled around a dagger, the ink jagged and deliberate, like it had been carved in haste. He muttered something in his native tongue, stepping back. Reza's eyes narrowed. "What is it?" he barked. Omar pointed, his voice low. "Her back. Look." Reza stepped closer, pushing past Harris. He lifted Amira's shirt higher, exposing the tattoo fully. The scorpion's pincers seemed to pulse under the sunlight, the dagger's blade glinting with an almost metallic sheen. Reza's breath caught. He knew that mark. He'd seen it before years ago, in a different war, a different life. 10 years earlier, Reza had been a major, leading a covert unit in a neighboring conflict. His team had worked with a group of local operatives, men and women who risked everything to feed intel to coalition. They were ghosts, moving through villages and markets, their identities protected by code names and symbols. The scorpion and dagger was one of those symbols, etched into the skin of a handful of operatives who'd survived a brutal mission in the mountains. Reza had been there, coordinating the operation, watching as half the team didn't make it back. The survivors had sworn never to speak of it, their tattoos a silent oath. Amira couldn't have been more than 17 back then, but Reza's mind raced, piecing together fragments. There'd been a girl, a runner, barely out of her teens, who'd carried messages through enemy lines. She'd been fearless, slipping past checkpoints with a smile that disarmed suspicion. They'd called her Scorpion for her sting, her ability to strike without warning. Reza hadn't seen her face clearly, not in the chaos, but the tattoo was unmistakable. It wasn't just a design. It was a badge of survival, a mark of loyalty to a cause most had forgotten. Step back. Reza snapped at the soldiers. His voice was sharp, but his hands trembled slightly. The crowd fell silent, sensing the shift. Amira's gaze hadn't wavered, but now it held a challenge, as if daring him to remember. Reza's mind churned. If she was Scorpion, she wasn't a traitor. But if she wasn't, the tattoo could be a forgery, a ploy to manipulate him. He'd seen fakes before, spies using stolen symbols to infiltrate. But this tattoo wasn't new. The ink was faded at the edges, scarred in places, as if it had lived through years of hardship. "Who are you?" Reza asked, his voice low, meant only for her. "You know who I am," Amira replied, her tone steady. "You just don't want to admit it." The crowd didn't hear her words, but they saw Reza's face, the way his jaw tightened, the way his eyes flicked between her and the tattoo. He gestured for the soldiers to untie her, but he didn't give the order to release her. Instead, he led her to his office, away from the prying eyes. The door closed behind them, and for the first time, Amira's composure cracked just a fraction. She rubbed her wrist where the zip ties had bitten into her skin. "Talk," Reza said, leaning against his desk. "That tattoo, where'd you get it?" Amira sat, her movements deliberate. "You were there," she said. "Cost 2015. The mountain pass. You called in the airstrike that saved us. I carried the coordinates to your team. I was 16. Reza's stomach twisted. He remembered Cost, the mission that had cost him half his unit. He remembered the girl, small and quick, slipping through the dark with a scrap of paper that turned the tide. She'd been a kid, too young for the wave of it all. He'd never known her name, only her code name, Scorpion. "Why didn't you say anything?" he asked. 3 months here, and you never mentioned it. Would you have believed me?" Amira shot back. "A translator with a story like that? You have called it a lie. Locked me up sooner. I came here to do my job, not dig up the past." Reza paced, his mind racing. The accusations against her, the note, the phone calls, didn't add up now. Someone had set her up, but who? The outpost was a nest of rivalries, soldiers and locals alike jockeying for favor. Amira's skill had made her enemies, people who resented her influence, her access to sensitive talks. Reza had been too quick to believe the worst, too ready to make an example of her. "Who else knows?" he asked. "About Kas, about you?" "No one," Amira said. "The others are dead or gone. I didn't exactly advertise it." Reza believed her, but the situation was a mess. The crowd outside had seen the search, the tattoo, his reaction. Rumors were already spreading, and he couldn't just let her walk without an explanation. But locking her up now would mean admitting he'd been wrong, and worse, it might bury the truth about the real mole. Over the next week, Reza kept Amira under watch, not as a prisoner but as a protected asset. He dug into the leaks, retracing every piece of intel that had gone missing. He questioned the soldiers who'd accused her, pressing them until their stories cracked. The note, it turned out, had been planted by a local recruit with a grudge, paid off by a rival faction to sow chaos. The phone calls were a fabrication, a rumor spun from nothing. Reza's instincts had been right about one thing. There was a mole, but it wasn't Amira. He never apologized, not directly. That wasn't his way. But he made sure the outpost knew the truth. At a briefing, he announced that Amira had been cleared, her work vital to their mission. He didn't mention the tattoo or Kas, but he didn't need to. The soldiers who jeered her now avoided her gaze, and the locals who'd whispered about her started nodding with respect. Amira didn't bask in it. She went back to her translations, her head down, her focus unshaken. Months later, when Reza was reassigned to another post, he left a note for Amira, slipped under her door. It was short, just a few words. "Scorpion, thank you." She didn't keep it, but she read it, and for the first time in years, she felt seen, not as a translator, not as a suspect, but as the girl who'd survived the mountains, the one who'd carried the weight of a war on her back. The outpost moved on. The war ground forward, but the story of Amira's tattoo lingered. It became a quiet legend among the soldiers, a reminder that appearances could deceive, that loyalty could hide in plain sight. Amira stayed until her contract ended, then left for a new assignment, her past still etched on her spine, her future unwritten.